Welcome to Inspiration Contagion, where we spread inspiration one story at a time. I am your host, Holly Jean Jackson. Each interview spotlights transformational business leaders, their stories, challenges, and advice for how you too can lead yourself and others through inspiration. Learn how you too can achieve peak performance, build more revenue, and lead the legacy you were meant to lead. Welcome back. This is episode 89 of Inspiration Contagion, and this week my guest is Steve Hamoen. He is a 10x business coach, speaker, and entrepreneur. Steve helps companies identify their challenges in revenue and scaling. With that, Steve, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Well, Holly, thank you very much for having me. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. You're allowed to say that. No, editor, cut that out. Nobody can know it's my birthday. It's top secret information the CIA must not know.
That's right.
Well, with that, Steve, I want to ask you, what makes you such an inspirational leader, or what is your secret sauce?
Well, my secret sauce probably is I'm really good at making mistakes. I've had, businesses that I've run that we've done extremely well, and then we've run into certain roadblocks in the business. And, one of the things is, the ability to make mistakes. And then the second thing is the ability to be able not to be conquered by those mistakes, and then to be able to look for solutions to get around them, overtop them, through them, whichever it is. And I would say probably the big thing is the second, which is being able to go in, around, or through those mistakes that I so happily love to find all the time.
I feel like this episode should be named like serendipity, the happy accidents that happen, getting to the mistakes quickly and finding the magic within them.
You always label things so beautifully, I swear. Unbelievable. You're like a walking poetry.
Oh, thanks. That's part of my secret sauce, Steve. So I'm glad you see that and hear that and feel that. Cool. Well, let's shift gears just a little bit. What does inspiration mean to you?
For me, it's like, I think inspiration is sometimes it's something that you can look at, and sometimes it's something that's inherent. Some people ask me, like, how can you get up every morning and go to the gym at 5:30? How can you work till 11 o'clock at night? How can you train in the gym 20 hours while you're still working 40 to 50 hours and still spend time with your kids and do all these things? And I think that sometimes it's just an inherent inspiration that just drives you. And it's something that you really can't point to. But then sometimes there's an external inspiration that'll hit you, such as, the people that you surround yourself with. I think if, the statement, show me your 5 and I'll show you your future, I think is very true. And the more you can spend time with people who are high level thinkers, I think that can be inspirational. And then sometimes it's perspirational rather than inspirational, because there's something that's negative that's motivating you to do something positive. And so it'll be one of those things. It'll be something that's pulling you, or something that's pushing you, or it's just something that's inherent. So I guess there's my trifecta answer on that one.
I like the trifecta. I have never had somebody answer the perspirational piece. I like that a lot. And it makes sense, because think about it. If you have a massive pain point, massive struggle, massive, something to overcome that has affected your family generationally, or just something you're deeply passionate about because it's broken in the world. I've met lots of people that are motivated by, social justice or fixing generational challenges, or, lots of things that just kind of motivate them because of the struggle and pain it's creating. So that's a great reminder. And then, the internal drive for some people is there naturally. And for some of us, we have to externally source that to find our internal motivators. So I like the trifecta response. This is the first time somebody's answered it that way. It's very compelling. Yeah. Man, I got to think about my perspirational. I love when people say I can't do something, so that I can be like, let me show you. Let's talk in a year from now. Let's talk in 5 years from now. We'll see how you feel about that response.
Exactly. Don't tell me I can't, or actually tell me I can't do something, so I'll go do it.
Exactly. It has to be something I want to do, though. If it's not, I'm like, whatever.
That's good.
Cool. Well, let's shift from inspiration to let's talk a little bit about peak performance. I'd like to hear, how do you define peak performance, and how did you come to this definition?
So to me, peak performance is something where when you push past all those barriers that you thought existed and get to that level that you never thought possible. And so, for example, I coach Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And when I look at somebody who says, I can't, some people come in the gym and they just want to have collaboration with people. They're coming for a social perspective, but they don't realize that they have an inherent real peak performance, which is, just getting mobile or just losing weight or just feeling emotionally strong. And that's their peak performance. Not to say that they can't build off of that, but it's something that they never thought possible. Other people, they're going to come in the gym and they're already killers physically, but their peak performance is in self-control. Their peak performance is in the ability to allow others to express themselves. And so each person's going to have something different, I think, when it comes to a peak performance. And I think that's something that's always moving. Like I heard a quote that said, like, Elon Musk was saying, and this is what Grant Cardone said. He said something about, and I'm going to bastardize the quote, but it was like, nothing stays static, right? And so just like your peak, I think somebody's peak performance will not stay static. Like it's like the first time you make $1 million, you're like, wow, I made $1 million. That's not a static goal anymore. Now it's like, how do I make 2 million? How do I make 5 million? It's not because you're greedy, but it's because you want to be more impactful about the things that you're doing. So your peak performance ladder starts to, you keep on looking up and up and up. So I think it's always something that's in motion.
I like that too. And it brings to mind this quote that I love, that applies to peak performance and how it's constantly changing, but how it also applies to relationships in our life, where we meet people for a reason, a season, or for life. I think the same thing applies to our peak performance. And I like how you described the specific examples of how that's constantly changing, because the only constant in life is change. And so I like the idea of having your peak performance shift based on a specific reason, like something you're trying to intentionally shift and grow and optimize in terms of peak performance. Or there's also the season, right? So maybe the season you're in is building your community and those 5 people and having that support because you're feeling unsupported. And then there's peak performance for life, right? Where some of us are just naturally inherently driven and we are constantly redefining and growing and 10xing that next peak performance statement. So it's a really compelling way to look at peak performance. Now, I know that along the way to you defining and discovering peak performance for you, that there were some challenges and some obstacles along the way. So, what were some of those on your journey to peak performance?
I think probably the hardest obstacles to overcome are the obstacles you don't see, or you see them but you don't give them credence. In other words, you don't believe them to be true. And so those might be things in your leadership style. I mean, I know for me that was something that I really had to learn. It might be in the way that you expect maybe not enough or too much of the people around you, and that's something that I definitely needed to work on. And then your systemized, for me, because I don't know if you know the disc profile. The disc profile is a tool to look at people's personality index, and, and when you look at you and when you start to realize who you are based on an index, it's an impersonal way of looking at yourself and sort of taking an inventory of the things that you're really good at and the things that maybe you're really not really good at and you need to work on, or the things that you need to outsource to other people. And so one of the things that really helped me to do by going through using a process such as the disc, and there's many of them out there, um, is to identify the things that I really needed to do to overcome some of those barriers that I had. And I think leadership is certainly one of those things that everybody thinks they're a good leader, but they don't realize how much work they have to do on themselves to become an amazing leader. Because I think the idea of being good is not good enough. I think you have to go to amazing, and I think you have to go far beyond that. And again, I go back to the idea of surrounding yourself in the circle of people that are better than you, because then you realize, wow, do I have a lot of work to do?
Oh man, it's so interesting. I love how life timing brings you messages, happy accidents, coming back to serendipity from the beginning of our session. It is so fascinating to me. We meet people based on season, reason, and what we need in that moment. And I like how you said that when you meet these people or you surround yourself by people that are amazing, you see the gap. And even possibly it starts highlighting as a mirror for you some of the blind spots that perhaps you've neglected and you're not aware of in your leadership style. And the reason this is interesting timing is personally, even when it comes to dating, right? I have not dated somebody who's intimidated me for a very long time. And recently I went on a date with this man who actually intimidated me, and it's been a really great mirror for some of the blind spots on areas that I thought I had a handle on that I still need to grow in, which I find great. Like, I think that's exciting when we see these blind
Mm-hmm.
spots, these growth opportunities of how we can find more balance, where we can grow, where we can expand ourselves. It's uncomfortable, but it's also exciting. And I agree, like, the people that are awesome leaders are the ones who surround them by the folks who do intimidate them, that do act as a mirror for them to grow, that do allow them to see those blind spots so that they're not stuck in the status quo or putting themselves in a box so that they can continue to optimize their peak performance. So, love that insight. Thanks for sharing that. And
Hey.
the next thing I want to ask you, so peak performance goes beyond the leader. You talked about already how that leadership part is important for becoming amazing, to have that greatness. How have you done that and created a culture of peak performance within your company? Or how are you doing that?
I think it goes back to, again, knowing what you really do very well, and then knowing what other people do really well that are, and hopefully they do better than you at those positions, and then elevating them into those positions. I think too many times leaders lead from the top rather than leading by underpinning the organization. They lead with a thumb on the top of the organization, and they believe that control is how you lead. I love the Richard Branson approach of, teach somebody everything that they could do, that they could go out and compete with you, but create a culture that they never want to. And I think that's one. And I take that a step further is, even hire people that already could be your top competitors, and who are better than you, and who can come into that position and do a really good job in that capacity. Because I think that too many times people's egos gets in the way of their success, and they want to be the top. They want to be the knowledge center. They want to be the everything in the organization. Where I think a leader understands that they can't be the everything in the organization. If they were, they're going to hold the organization back. So I think just understanding where are you dominating in your business, and then say, is that adding value to your business, or is that stopping your business from growing?
Yeah, man, I have met so many clients and just so many people networking where this is their blind spot, right? Where they're getting in the way of their team growing and they have no idea, but it's just super obvious to anybody externally that's visualizing or seeing this very quickly. And so it's so important that the leader understands what their superpower is. Like, what are they good at? What is their state of flow? What are they just naturally gifted, talented, have thousands of hours of experience in doing? And they stick to that. And then creating a culture where your employees can do the same. So, like you said, equipping them with the skills so that they could technically be your competitors, hiring people that, like I just said, intimidate you because they're so darn good at what they do, but it's a gap that you are not skilled at. And then also being that leader that understands your blind spots, your gaps, the areas that you have weaknesses in, being willing to put your ego aside and hire for the betterment of the company, the culture, and for the whole team winning. And this is something I see a lot of people struggle with. Like, their business is their baby, they have too much of an ego to bring on incredibly smart people. They're afraid of their staff or their employees or contractors challenging their ideas. Personally, I love it. Like if I have somebody I'm interviewing and they say, "Well, I'm just going to do exactly what you say to do," I am not hiring you because I need you to put your, foot in the ground, have a line in the sand and say, "Holly, I don't like the way you're doing this. I have a better way," and tell me. And have the confidence to do that. And that's how you create a culture where everybody wins, where everybody can be in their God gifted talent, the thing that they love doing that puts them in flow. So they want to stay and they don't compete against you. It's a great example,
Absolutely.
Steve.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Oh, thank you. We're building off of each other. I love it.
That's right.
So I wanted to ask you on that, how important would you say is the employee experience to peak performance in your organization?
Well, I think it's critical. I think the one thing that I think leadership, and I was working with an organization just last week and really trying to help them understand who their customer is. And they kept on talking about their customer as the person who's outside of the office, the consumer. And I'm like, no, as leadership, your customer is your employee. And you need to treat them that they come in every day and have a 5-star experience. As long as they're giving the organization a 5-star experience in return, you need to give it back to them. If they're not, you need to find out why. And generally, if you can find out why and solve that problem right away, they're going to go back to 5-star experience for them. And if they're 5-star, that means the experience with your customer, because they're the one who's going to be talking with your customer every day. They're the ones who are going to give that as well in return. But if they're disenfranchised, they're disconnected, they don't feel appreciated, they don't feel like they have a voice. Um, that's gonna hurt the whole thing. And that's why we see, like, in a lot of the organizations over the past couple of years, especially with this massive inflation that we've just had, a lot of people, for example, they're not making enough money. They're in their company, they've been with that company for 5-10 years, that sort of thing, and they're barely able to pay their rent, or they're barely able to pay their mortgage. They're not able to save any money, and they're disconnected, right? And so they'll start looking at side hustles. They'll start looking at things outside of the organization. They start getting off mission. And as soon as they start getting off mission and off value, well, your client experience is going to go down. Your quality is going to go down. Everything, your productivity is going to go down in your organization. And so if you go back to mission critical and ensuring that your employees, which as leadership are your customers, are having a 5-star experience, which means they're getting the return that they're looking for. They feel valuable. They feel engaged. They're getting compensated in the way that best suits the outcomes that they're producing. You can't help but win.
Yeah. Well, and that's the winning situation. The winning scenario is creating win-win-win experiences. And I love the idea of having and creating a 5-star employee experience, and almost would challenge our listeners today, if you're struggling with your employee experience, start having them grade you daily. Like literally create a simple Google form and have them evaluate you daily with kind of an open comment field on why it's not a 5-star experience, and then start incrementally adjusting that so that you're hitting 5 stars consistently, and then start tracking that against your customer experience. And I guarantee it's going to improve. Just like Steve said, when your employees are feeling heard and seen and supported, both financially but also professionally supported in their career goals, their growth goals, what they want to achieve in their personal life, that weeds over into their professional life, and you're seeing that, you're invested in that, you care, of course they're going to be more invested in the company. They're going to have a 5-star experience. Your customers are going to see they love their job, and so you're never going to lose customers again because you're creating that 5-star employee experience. So the challenge today from this episode, if you guys are listening and you're up for the challenge, is to create that survey and that form and start getting real-time feedback from your employees. And I want to hear from you. Comment on the show notes, comment on the YouTube channel. Let us know if this is working, and the feedback you're getting from your employees, and some of the things you've done to shift that to a 5-star experience, so we can hear from you and some real world examples. So thanks
Well,
for that, Steve.
no worries. And the great thing is if you get a 4-star or less, there's actually a system that you can use to quickly assess how you can bring that back up to 5-star, right? And it's called the A32C, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to look at, number one, their activity level. how engaged are they in doing what they need to do? If they're doing if they're doing accounting, are they, getting all the invoicing out? If they're in sales, are they making their calls? What does their activity level look like? And that's where people usually start. That's, I would say, that's a barometer, and that's something that we have to obviously look at. But then we immediately need to jump up to attitude, which is the second, which is really the first A, where activity is the third A. And we start off with that. And the reason why I want to do that is we want to address the two C's, which is how committed are they? In other words, are they reviewing their goals? And then when we look at how committed are they, then we look at their goals and say, how do their goals align? Then the next thing, after we look at their commitment, we look at their consistency. So they're going to say, how consistent are they doing it? Are they committed to doing what they're doing it? And we look at, basically, are they sold in what they're doing and connecting their activity up to their their attitude. Once we hit the attitude, then we hit the approach in the middle. The approach in the middle is the connector between the activity and the attitude. And so once we hit that in the middle, we can see, is there something that we need to fix in their approach? Is it they just don't understand the systems, they don't understand the models, they need maybe they have a better way of doing things that we got to listen to. And I think if you hit those, the three A's and the two C's, I think that is the biggest thing that you'll be able to do in order to create a 5-star review again.
I like that. It's like specific strategies and details for you to dig into that and read between the lines of what you're hearing back from your employees. And now that you have those three A's and the two C's, you can also have conversations. So if you have an employee who's consistently doing a 4 or below, that's a great conversation you can have. And those are some great gauges you can use to have a really intentional chat on their attitude, their activity, their commitment, their consistency. And the easier one is the approach. Like if they
Mm-hmm.
have everything else, it's just a how issue. And then you give them the tools and the system for doing that. And that's really easy to fix.
Yep.
So thanks for sharing those specifics, Steve.
Yep.
Um, we kind of talked a little bit about this already, but I wanted to ask you, we've talked about the employee experience and how that affects your customer experience, but what are some other ways you've optimized your customer experience?
I think, you can talk all cerebral about your business and what you can do for mission, vision, value, all of those elements in the business. And I think those are extremely important. And I think then to convert those into very tactical implementations, I think is key. And I think you do that both through your people, which we've talked about. We talked a little bit about processes, in ensuring that you have the right approach. And I think the last thing to look at is the technology. And I think technology is something that is very pervasive in how we need to function to create maximum success for both the employee as well as for the end consumer, for our clients. And whether that be looking at AI and how AI is going to be impacting in your business, whether just looking at systems for collaboration. I think gone are the day of siloed information. I think anybody who has silos doesn't understand the value of collaboration. And to be able to break down those walls, technology does a wonderful and it isn't a wonderful enabler for doing that. So I think technology is probably the thing I would say that is going to be the unique advantage for a business going to 2024.
Yeah, and there are lots of examples. People, as soon as they hear AI, there's like this whole debate, and people get all uncomfortable. Guys, AI has been here a long time. Before I even started my business, when I was working in corporate, I was training a team in India that was ultimately replacing my role and outsourcing me. So AI has been here a while. Technology is here to stay. So, how can you amplify technology in a way that's going to support your employees, which has the ripple effect for your customers? How can you leverage technology to break down silos to offer more collaboration? And how can you leverage your technologies to create raving fans from your customer base in ways that are seamless, creating unique experiences so that you are beating your customers, which ultimately comes down to the customer experience that you are creating if you want to beat your competitors. Amazing stuff. We are going to pivot from peak performance to everybody's favorite topic, the show me the money part of the show. So we're going to talk about revenue. All right,
Love it. I love revenue.
Steve. Yeah, I know we all love revenue, right? We want to go big so we can give big. Steve, can you share with the audience an example of when you've left money on the table and what you did to fix it?
When I left money on the table and what I did to fix it. Well, I mean, I hate to admit this, but there's been many times where I've left money on the table. Probably one of the ones that I'll hit a success because I like hitting that first and then kind of giving you the, where my deficits are. Success is always looking forward and looking at the next new shiny thing. And we spend a lot of time as salespeople and as marketers and business owners really looking forward and saying, like, how can we conquer this new market? How can we create more opportunities, more leads, looking external? I think the challenge, and I can say one of the deficits that we're certainly plugging in our business going into 2024, is how can we encourage thoughtful communication with our existing customers, and how can we generate a rewarding experience both for them as well as for our business going forward into 2024. So I would say the existing client base is probably the thing that I would say where I've left most money on the table. It goes to that. And I think it goes down to, again, putting the right KPIs in place. We've always had the KPIs, key performance indicators, for new business, but our KPIs for existing business always seem to be a little soft. And so that was probably one of the things going into 2024 that we're like, we've got to plug this one, because we work so hard to build these relationships, and they're always great relationships when we knock on the door and say hi again. But it's just a matter of continually knocking on that door, continually adding value, so that we can have a mutually beneficial growing relationship with our existing client base.
I like that one. We're going to go to the other more. You said you want to share the success piece first, and then you have another example you're going to share. But before we get to the other example, first of all, yes, people leave so much money on the table with their existing customer base. Business owners are so obsessed with more leads, more sales, new revenue, that they oftentimes forget about their existing customers. And that's why I obsess about the customer experience when I worked at Visa, Treasury Wine Estates, University of California. And one of the first conversations I have with new clients is about their customer experience. Because your business ATM, where you're leaving money on the table, is starting with your customers. And people
Mm-hmm.
forget that if they can stay in front of and support their customers, that's where you get more revenue. And it's not necessarily just directly from them, it's through having VIP platinum referral programs where your existing fans, your customers, want to support you and want to work with you because it's creating a win-win for everyone involved. So I love that you're plugging that profit leak. You know, I'm obsessed with
Well,
plugging
well,
profit
I'm plugging
leaks.
it because you and I had a conversation not more than a few days ago, wink, wink, on that specific one. So it was right in alley in alignment with that conversation.
Well, good. I'm glad that I inspired you to plug that profit leak. What is the other story you wanted to share? You said that was a success one. You had another example of leaving money
Yeah.
on the
So
table.
so the other one is, one of the things that the reason why I sort of gravitated really a lot towards Grant Cardone and the whole 10x community is around specifically Grant Cardone's story of success. And I look at, when he started off really banging on the doors, knocking at every door around town. I mean, there's people in Toronto that I bump into. They're like, "Oh, I remember I'm meeting Grant at the, whatever cheesy motel where he had 50 of us in a room, and he's coaching 50 of us in a room." And really that hard sale kind of approach. Um, the reason why I gravitated towards Grant is because he realized that while that was got him to where he needed to at the beginning, his next level of growth all came through the focus on marketing and how important marketing is in a business. And it's something that I've left on the table since the very beginning, because I always thought, oh, I build my business off of referrals, even though maybe I'm not the best at existing client engagement, but it's something that I'm working on. But I did do a great job of referrals because I'd have such a great client experience when they needed me. But the thing is that what I didn't do was create that spot for to be able to build through marketing. And I think Alan out of Cardone's office, he said it very eloquently, where he talked about sales teams are like butterfly catchers. They're running around a field with a net chasing the butterflies. And hopefully after spending lots of energy and maybe twisting an ankle, they finally catch a butterfly, and hopefully it doesn't die before they bring it back. What marketing is it's planting a garden and letting that garden grow so that the butterflies are just going to come to you. So you don't actually have to catch them. They just want to be with you. And yeah, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of inertia to be able to get there in time, but it leads to a longer sustainable business. And that's what really kind of drew me into the whole 10x community. And obviously for our conversations, it's something that I think is extremely important.
Yeah, I that's a great analogy. I like the visual of that. And I love butterflies. I don't know if you know this, that butterflies are like one of my animal spirits and they're like something I
Oh,
pray for with signs. So I'm obsessed with butterflies. So
love
that's
it.
just magical for me. But the reason I love that is when I work as a revenue performance consultant across the 5 buckets of where people always leave money on the table and have massive profit leaks, it always comes back to marketing. And the reason I love marketing is because once you plant those seeds and let them grow and blossom, and you plant the right ones with intention and you get the messaging right, it eventually becomes this amazing magnet that magically works and attracts the right people and pushes away the wrong. And what's great is, so I'm a marketing expert and I've been doing marketing very intentionally in my business for the last 6 years. And now I auto magnetically attract the right people to
Hmm.
my platform because of planting those seeds and growing that garden for so long, which makes it so much easier to build a community, to get clients, to get referrals. So I love that example. And I'm glad that you are seeing that and investing in that, because people make the mistake of never investing in their marketing or unintentionally planting the wrong seeds. And then you get these weeds in your garden. And man, they're a nightmare to get rid of. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it goes to back to the first thing that we talked about is the idea of, where I said I've run into all the pitfalls, but my superpower is being able to identify those pitfalls and find a way around them. And I think it's introspection is being able to look inside and saying, yes, there's something I need to work on. Yes, I'm willing to absorb information external because I know I don't have all the information. And I think that if there's anything of a superpower, that's probably one of my biggest.
That's a pretty badass superpower. I like
It's
it.
not
I
bad.
dig it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah. Okay, so I want to ask you, this is like one of my favorite questions to ask. What is the next shiny object that you would like to turn into a new revenue stream?
Oh, AI, 100%. Double down, triple down. That's an easy answer. I think technology right now, it's such an enabler. And I think, to me, the vision of the future for AI is Star Wars, not in the way that we're going to have, Boba Fett and, a Jar Jar Binks, but more in the fact that we're going to have R2D2 and C3PO. And AI really, I think, is going to fill that gap. It's going to be handling a lot of base level integration in collaboration. We use computers so much to be able to handle transactional elements of how we communicate. I mean, we're using technology right now because we're so far abroad, and we have no problem in using technology to do that. All we're looking at with AI is it will take out a lot of the baseline communication that's going to happen on the next level of communication rather than just at the transactional level. So I think that's the thing that I'm really excited about going into 2024 and 2025 because I won't call it the Wild West, but I'll call it the Wild West world in the sense that there's just so much more that we can grow in that space, and I'm really excited to dial into that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one to bring up, because in terms of monetizing AI, there's so much low hanging fruit for business owners.
Mm-hmm.
Just simply looking at some of the tactical things you do that are extremely repetitive, administrative every day, seeing which things you can just pull zaps across and then use AI elements to auto, fill that thing. There's even just ideation from working with AI. There's just so many possibilities that help you generate more revenue, help improve efficiencies, help your team achieve peak performance, not getting stuck. There's so much opportunity. And I like that you didn't call it the Wild West, because I mean, it's been around for a while and it's only as good as the people that put together the AI and how you're
Mm-hmm.
structuring it in your organization. I hate to break it to everyone, AI is not magic. It's actually, you have to intentionally use it and map it out for it to be effective and for you to have profit gains and efficiency gains from it. But when you know how to use it, it is a powerful amplifier to improve efficiency in your organization, help free up your employees' time so they can get back in their superpowers and help you do more quickly in your organization.
And AI, I think if you treat AI as an employee, I think you're going to have a better relationship with AI because employees can be the best thing that happens in your organization. But I mean, as let's face it, there's also going to be those days where we're going to be looking at our employees saying, what can we do to make this experience better for both of us? And the same thing applies to AI. And so sometimes AI isn't going to get it right, and sometimes it's going to go way off the deep end. Um, but for the most part, it's driving in the right direction. And I think that's the thing, that if you built it as an employee that's adjacent, I think it's going to be your R2D2, it's going to be your C3PO, and it's going to handle a lot of the tasks that now you can elevate your work level to the next level. It's like when we talk about employees, you never want to say, I'm not going to hire that employee because they're too good. That's the same thing as AI. You're hiring it because it's really great at what it does.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring up the concept of treating AI like an employee. Because if you think about, for example, Alexa or Siri, they're using AI, guys. So ultimately, you can create your own version of Siri or Alexa within your organization in such a way that you're programming it to improve your customer experience, your employee experience, make everything efficient, and having that gold mine knowledge asset in one place, but also kind of creating a persona around it that optimizes performance in your organization. So it's kind of a playful, fun way to look at building AI in your organization. I love
Well,
it.
and if you look at even just socially and politically, I mean, the idea that it can democratize education. When we look at any of these schools that are in very difficult neighborhoods, using AI as a teaching mechanism, it doesn't get upset. It doesn't see race. It doesn't see gender. It will just teach to the objective of what it's been given. And so, if you're looking at trying to get information into people who maybe are a little bit faster or maybe a little bit slower in the way they absorb information, AI will have all the patience in the world, and AI will move at all the speed in the world. And it can do that with a million people all at once, or a billion, or whatever else is using it on a daily basis. So, to be able to share and communicate with education, I think we're going to see AI in the education space very quickly. In fact, there's a company that's already doing it, where they use AI to do 80% of the teaching, and then the teachers move away from teaching and they more move into coaching. And I think that's a very unique experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're going to see as the future.
Yeah, I mean, my background was in education and technology, and so AI has been in that space for a while. So it's not surprising that they're putting it into the teachers' hands because, quite frankly, the teachers have way too much on their plate. But I think the compelling piece for business owners is creating AI as part of your onboarding experience, where it's
Mm-hmm.
paced to magically meet that person where they are at the pace that works for them without getting in the way of other people that are trying to just get the day to day done. There's so many different examples, but that's a totally different episode. And we're going to wrap this one up before we go down the rabbit hole, Alice in Wonderland AI rabbit hole storyline. Steve, this has been a great interview. We're going to do our last two wrap up questions as we've
Perfect.
complete. Question number one: what is the best one piece of advice that you would share with others today?
I think the number one thing is always be learning, always be learning, and understand where that information comes from, understand why that information is coming to you. And I think, surround yourself with people who have more information than you have. And I think if that would be anything, it's just all around information. Be a sponge and learn from people who are better than you. And that would be my first, foremost, second, third, fourth, fifth thing.
Continue being an educated learner and be coachable for a life so that you can be that sponge. Beautiful. My last question, Steve: what's the legacy you wish to leave behind?
If I was being tactical, I want to leave something for my family, that, my kids have the skills that's necessary to succeed in the world as the world changes. And they can learn through me. They can learn through looking at me, and they can learn through what I've given to them going into the future. I think that's a huge one. And then in the community, I want to have the same experience, to have enough abundance that I'm able to give further past my family into my extended family, which is my community. And that's not a local community, that's a global community.
Beautiful. I love it. Starting with the family and having that ripple effect positively into our communities. Thank you so much, Steve. This has been a really insightful, really helpful, really tactical as well interview so that our listeners can take big action so they can go big, so they can give even more back to their communities. With
Beautiful.
that, thank you so much, Steve. If
Thank
you
you for
want to
having me.
get, yeah, thank you. If you want to get in touch with Steve, in the show notes and in the YouTube notes, I will have all of the links for his socials as well as his website. Please do reach out to him if you found this compelling and you'd like to learn more about working with Steve. With that, thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode of the podcast. Thank you for joining the show today. I hope you were inspired. More importantly, I hope you take action. If the show inspired you, I ask that you subscribe and share it with your network. Let's spread inspiration together today.